And so the time has arrived. Pride 1, October 11th, 1997. History is made, ladies and gentlemen, from the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan, the Big Egg building. Pride FC presents Pride 1. Conflicting numbers on attendance here. Tapology, it says 37,000. Wikipedia, over 47,000. Commentary says 45. I'm going to go somewhere in the region of 40,000 people. Now, cards on the table. I might have overshot the number of photos for the number of notes that I have on this event, but we'll just see what happens. We'll roll with it. We get a nice intro to start, some upbeat music. I am fired up after this, by the way. We then just get straight into the action, which was a pleasant surprise. Very shocked at that, considering every UFC event we've had up until now goes straight to the commentary desk and we stall for 15 minutes. It's quite nice to just jump straight into action. Our first fight, I've got written down the octagon here. We're not in the octagon, we're in the ring. And in the ring, we hear from our commentator, Stephen Quadros and Bash Rutten, who welcome us to the event. And in the ring for our first fight, we have got Kazunari Murakami. See these pronunciations, I've got this down. And John Dixon, that's an easy one. Instantly, the fight starts, the two clinch up, and John Dixon, just looking at him, I didn't think this guy was going to be able to move. I thought this was our token, UFC, Taylor Tully, Emmanuel Yarborough type fight, or fucking Thomas Ramirez style, where we just have this massive guy who can't move, but for the sake of the spectacle, we've got him here. I will say Dixon can actually move, which is unexpected, but impressive. He lands a nice body kick at the start here, and then we get a nice takedown from Dixon, but nothing actually comes of it. We stand back up, and the crowd applauds, which I love. I mean, the Japanese crowd is different from the UFC crowd, first of all. I'll just say this now, the audio is kind of fucked up here. I feel as though the commentary's in post-production or something like that. They're not actually live at the event. So when mixing the sound, it's like the crowd kind of gets drowned out at points while you hear the commentary loud and clear. It's strange, but I mean, we'll talk about it towards the end of the video when we wrap up. Murakami with a phenomenal hip toss here, gets the armbar, Ronda Rousey style, and the win. He gets a big trophy and a bouquet of flowers for the win. Now, I thought this might just be, so he's the first fight and he gets these kind of special privileges. Everybody gets it after every win. And I've watched Pride before where the guys get handed a much smaller trophy, but still a trophy nonetheless, after every win. How expensive is that? What are these trophies made out of? Are they just plastic? Because handing these out after every single fight and a full bouquet of it's not just roses, but it's a bouquet of flowers. Why? I don't I don't get that. I suppose it's just part of the ceremony, but nice for him. He bounces back from his last fight, which when I looked up who Murakami was, his last fight he lost to Maurice Smith, who from our last UFC retro review is the current UFC heavyweight champion at this time. So we'll see what happens here if we ever see Murakami in the UFC. I doubt it. But next up after this, we have UFC 6 champion Oleg Taktarov up against the UFC 8 runner-up Gary Big Daddy Goodridge. We haven't seen either of these two in a while. We haven't seen Goodridge in UFC. I can't even remember the numbered event that he was on. But he's been away working on his game. He won the International Vale Tudo tournament in Brazil. I think he only had one other fight there at I think it might have been Universal Vale Tudo, but he's been away, he's been winning. And it's also been a while since we've seen Oleg Taktarov. He's been fighting all over the place. He's had 5 fights since we last seen him in UFC. 3 wins, 1 loss against Renzo Gracie, and 1 draw against none other than Marco Huas. So those two did fight in UFC, and Taktarov won by decision. 18 minutes. I think it was at the Ultimate in 1995. They had a rematch not long ago and turned out to be a draw. So we get to this fight. The dome is so quiet and echoey that you can hear the odd person in the crowd screaming, and you can hear the corners very clearly as these two stand in the middle. and just trade. It's probably complimentary to say they trade. They just swing at each other, like just trying to take each other's head off. Not a whole load of technique in here, but before we then just return to a stagnant standing position in the middle of the ring. You can kind of see that Taktarov is cut, but I don't think anything could have landed to actually make that cut. I think he got scratched, is my honest assessment of that. But Goodridge ends up knocking down Taktarov hard. He caught him with an uppercut to stun him as he attempted the clinch, and drops him with a nasty right hook, drops the knee on him, some ground and pound. One of the nastiest soccer kicks I've ever seen. Holy shit. The camera misses it, but you can see the swing of Goodridge's leg and the crack as it hits Taktarov's head. It genuinely sounded like he cracked a whip, in the echo in the Tokyo Dome made it sound even worse. Oleg is back up, attempts to take down Goodridge, stuffs it. Goodridge looks like he's improved a whole lot here. Oleg tries to close distance, clinch Goodridge, who's able to create some distance and land a huge over right hand. KOs Taktarov badly, like faceplant unconscious. Goodridge gets his trophy and his bouquet of flowers, and then he starts limping, saying he thinks he's broke his foot off that soccer kick. He's telling his cornermen, I heard the break, or I felt the break, which is weird because he was moving around the ring like you wouldn't even have noticed. So, I mean, good job disguising that. It might just be one of those things that the adrenaline wears off and then you actually feel it. Oleg Taktarov is literally getting stretchered out of here. Like, this is not good. We have one winner, one loser, two casualties. Like, that was a bad KO. I don't know when we're gonna... I don't think we see Taktarov in UFC again. I don't know when we're going to see Goodridge back either after he just broke his foot. But fight of the night, I'll just say that right there. Next up, we have Renzo Gracie versus Akira Shoji. And what I appreciate about Renzo Gracie, and one of the, I don't know, benefits or whatever that he has over his close relative, Royce Gracie, is at least he doesn't have the fucking entire family ringside. He has a couple guys ringside, you can see, not the entire family. Helio isn't in the corner death staring the fucking referee. I'm thankful for it. So they mention the rivalry here when talking about Renzo Gracie. They mention the rivalry between Jiu-Jitsu and Luta Livre. If you've watched my UFC retro reviews, you know I stand with Luta Livre, right? Fuck these Jiu-Jitsu guys. They have been responsible for more bullshit fights than anybody else. These two here, Shoji and Gracie, stand for the first minute. Nothing really comes of it. They end up clinching against the ropes. And like in the corner, commentary let us know that it's against the rules to hold on to the ropes. Similarly to UFC, they just banned grabbing the fence. But here, similar rules, instead of the fence, it's just the ropes. So UFC actually made that rule after the Tank Abbott Scott Ferozzo fight, but from the off, these are the rules in Pride, no grabbing the ropes. The referee tells Shoji this, who completely just doesn't listen, blanks it, continues to grab the ropes in a desperate bid not to get taken down by Gracie. Renzo then eventually does get the takedown, and the two are like almost underneath the ropes, and so the referees, another rule in Pride, the referees then come into the ring and drag the two into the centre of the octagon of the ring. And this differs from UFC at this point, who just stand fighters up. It doesn't matter who is in what position. If there has to be a break in the action, say to check on a cut, or just because John McCarthy doesn't see any work, the people aren't working on the floor, Big John will just stand you up and you lose the position. Here it's a little bit different because they're under the ropes. They just get moved back into the centre. From there, Shoji turns round in the mount. Never a good idea, but he's able to get back to his feet and then just dives out of the ring between the ropes. Like, he tries to do it in slow motion, disguising like, oh, I really don't want to do this, but I'm being forced in between the ropes. He fucking dives out there head first, and just so that the fight gets restarted on the feet in the middle. He just doesn't want to be on the bottom here, and look, you can understand why he's up against a Gracie after all. So the restart has Henzo clinch Shoji back against the corner. We reverse the position. Shoji is now pressing Gracie in there. And there's no action here, so Bas Rutten actually tells a story about when he was in Pancrase, they would not let him in his corner talk anymore because apparently they would talk too much, and I suppose they would like talk shit to the opponent. So what he done was just put his cornermen in the back of the hall, and then they would just scream from the back, and because the hall was so quiet, they could just hear everything anyway, which I thought was quite funny when Bas tells it. Henzo jumps the gilly and is able to take it to the floor. He loses the position to finish the fight with the gilly, but he's able to just lie there and guard, which is a familiar position for the Gracies, and we're there until the end of the round. Henzo wins the round, I would say, but they don't actually explain what happens when we complete these rounds, how they're scored, or if there's judges, or if it just goes straight to a draw. They don't actually explain the rules, which, for all the grief that I give UFC, and I said that I enjoyed that we went straight into action, going over the rules and the ways to win probably would have been beneficial. But round 2 starts, Henzo attempts to take down, Shoji sprawls, ends up on top position, and Gracie is probably all good with this. To be honest, he even tries to isolate the arm for the arm lock. Shoji escapes, gets to his feet, and then Henzo just sits there on the floor, and I thought we were just going to be stuck here. There was no soccer kick attempt, and I wonder how much of that had to do with Gary Goodridge hurting himself in the previous fight. I wonder if that hadn't happened, if we would have seen another soccer kick there. Henzo goes for the takedown again. Shoji defends. A nice sprawl, but his legs are under the ropes. We have the referees come in again. It takes fucking 3 of them, and we move them back to the centre. Then he's able to reverse the position, ends up on top, into mount, and holy shit, Shoji like bucks up, turns round, gives up the back, stands up as Henzo goes for an armbar, and he is just about able to shake Gracie off. This is Jesus Christ, this is one of those things that you can only do after everybody's like sweating. Like, if you tried this dry, it is over, it is finished. But Gracie again just lays there on the floor, and Shoji stands back up, not far away enough so that the fight gets stood up again, but he's also like not really landing anything. Like, he's sort of just lording over him, not throwing, not taking a step back to stand this up. So it ends up just turning it like into a rest for Henzo as the round ends. So round 3, the 2 trade kicks. Shoji to the leg, Henzo to the body. Not a lot of action in the opening minutes, and not a whole lot of action in the round, if I'm being honest. Henzo pulls guard. We're here for a little while before Henzo reverses the position. Shoji's able to work back up to his feet. The crowd erupts as he stands up. But I mean, that is us until the end of the round. But the crowd was excited for a fleeting moment, and the fight scored a draw, which is probably fair for this fight. But it wasn't too bad in the first round. Really slowed down and got more boring as it went on. You felt like something was going to happen. You were waiting for something to happen, and it just never did. So a draw is probably a fair result. Not a bad fight, but nothing scintillating. But next up we have Nathan Jones, who is an Australian strongman and future WWE wrestler. He's up against Koji Kitao. He is a Yokozuna who we've seen before against Mark Hall at UFC 9. If you remember that shit card, you'll remember he tried to take down Mark Hall after a head clash on the floor. He broke his nose, and that was all she wrote. So this is pure freak show spectacle. Nathan Jones has never fought before or since. He looks confused going into the fight. And Koji Kitao, is he in slacks? The picture's quite grainy, even on like Fight Pass, and even though it's been like remastered or whatever, like, it's still difficult to tell. Like, he has to wear a belt to keep his trousers up. The first thing Nathan Jones throws in his first and only fight is a spinning crescent kick, and then his second engagement is another high kick attempt that misses, and he gets taken down after. But that is just crazy that the first thing, literally, that is all he throws in his one and only MMA fight, is a fucking spinning high kick. And then another high kick, misses both, gets taken down. The Yokozuna Kitao gets the key lock and the win. Bash Rutten on commentary saying Nathan Jones should have tried attacking the legs, which is a good point and fair. But in their analysis of the replay, it sure sounds as though like they're doing their best to avoid saying this was a fake fight. And I think they just settle on saying that Nathan Jones is not a grappler. And that's about the nicest thing they say for this fight. Next up, we have Ralph White against Brando Shikatic. Brando is the very first K1 Grand Prix champion. For those who may not know, K1 is still a Japanese kickboxing promotion, I'm sure. I don't think they went out of business. They did have money troubles for a while, but I'm sure they're still around. It was really big at the time and would be for the next few years, but like it doesn't really mean the same now as it did then. Now, when people think of like the big kickboxing promotion, they'll think of Glory as like the biggest one, but back in the day, K1 had that reputation, and this guy here, Brando, was the very first Grand Prix champion. So, like a complete dick, Brando goes for the glove touch, and upon contact, immediately lands a spinning back kick. Like, what a fucking prick. I should mention that this fight is a kickboxing match, not MMA, even though they have MMA gloves on. So, Shikatic doesn't even really knock down White. White goes for a kick and it's as though he trips up on his feet. But as he lands, Shikatic soccer kicks him while he's down, completely against the rules, knocks him out of the ring and apparently gives him cancer. I swear to God, Ralph White has a tumour growing on his brain. Like, that just looks disgusting. And why are the referees touching it? Like, I can't, that, oh, fuck's sake, that is so disturbing. That is just not nice at all. That is, oh man. Now, this is completely against the rules of kickboxing, right? There are no soccer kicks. And I have no idea why he thought he would get away with that. Like, I have no idea why he thinks that the fight is going to go on. Like, he's back to his corner after this, drinking water, resting up, thinking, oh, okay, we're about to come back out and restart the fight. Meanwhile, this guy has a stage 4 growth on his head. Like, no, this is an instant disqualification. This was completely on purpose, very illegal, has to be a disqualification. Bash Rutten on commentary says this has to be a disqualification. Ralph White's cornerman protests and tells the referee about the rules of kickboxing. Like, similar to UFC 1, like, where the referees don't know the MMA rules. This is an MMA referee that doesn't know kickboxing rules, but the cornerman comes in, starts untying White's gloves. There's no announcement the fight's over. There's no hand-raising ceremony, nothing. They both just come together in the middle of the ring for a summit. Brando, Ralph, the cornerman, they have words in the centre and the fight's thrown out. No contest. This is bullshit. Ralph White got robbed. Next up, we have a fight that I'm looking forward to. We have Kimo, the Hawaiian fighting legend, who they built from Germany, and he's up against Dan Severn. So the last time we spoke about Dan Severn was UFC 14. Bruce Beck said that Severn and UFC are in negotiations for a fight against Vitor Belfort at UFC 15, but as it happens, plans then change. The matchup plan for UFC 15 became Dan Severn versus Maurice Smith for the heavyweight title, which really, Severn already lost to Mark Coleman. It should be Vitor getting the fight against Maurice Smith, that is, seen as like he's won the tournament and a super fight against Tank Abbott, but I digress. Dan Severn was offered the fight against Kimo. There's rumours that Tank Abbott was offered this fight in Pride against Kimo, which I would have loved to have seen. Like, that's a fight I would have wanted to see more. But Dan Severn takes the fight against Kimo because Pride are offering him the bag. However, UFC 15, where he's scheduled to fight Maurice Smith, is 1 week after this event. The scheduled fight, Dan Severn, Maurice Smith, heavyweight title. The fight that actually ends up happening is Tank Abbott versus Maurice Smith for the heavyweight title. We do not see Dan Severn in the UFC again for a very long time. So, first of all, why the fuck did we pass up on Vitor Belfort and give Tank the fight, who literally just lost to Vitor? And then as a result, as a reward for beating Tank, Vitor, you're going to fight Randy Couture instead of Maurice Smith. This is bullshit. And look, I get that's for a UFC 15 review. I'll speak about this again. So if we get to the fight, commentary confirm what we already knew, that initially Kimo lied on his resume to get into UFC, said that he had a Taekwondo background, and that, folks, is why Jorge and Gracie made that matchup between Royce and Kimo, because he thought, okay, Taekwondo background, Gracie will just smoke this guy. But that ended up backfiring on him, which is always nice to see and always nice to revisit. The fight, as always, we start on the feet, nothing of value. Landing in the opening exchanges, or any exchanges. They clinch against the ropes, Severn can't get takedowns. We now get a stand-up fight between these guys who have no stand-up, and Stephen Quadros on commentary, almost apologetic for this, saying, well, this is anything but exciting. They're critiquing the technique of both men on the feet, but particularly Kimo, at least early on. Bash Rutten says Dan Severn resembles Eddie Mercury, and I don't think Queen was that big in Holland, but it then took Quadros a second to think of Freddie Mercury before telling Bass. I think Tank Abbott used to say that in a more derogatory tone. I'll let you imagine what that was. But again, I'm barely talking about this fight because there's nothing really to talk about. I've criticised UFC commentators, just about every one, Jim Brown to Jeff Blatnick. I think the only one I haven't is Don Wilson, but Stephen Quadros and Bash Rutten are two very honest commentators. They do not bullshit like UFC commentators, and I'd expect that from Bass just because of the Dutch culture and not giving a fuck, but Stephen Quadros is also very blunt and very honest about what he sees, and it's very nice. It is very refreshing to hear. They aren't like over the top disrespectful, but they are questioning the strategy of both men and blaming that for the bad fight. We have two people who grapple and aren't actually grappling, but whatever. Quadros on commentary is a delight. He's saying Severn has probably edged the fight here, but barely. Saying, I don't think the fans want to see Kimo and Severn in a boxing matchup, and he calls this a marathon of inactivity, which gets a chuckle out of Bass. And it makes me think, like, given Severn's history in wrestling, right? Pro wrestling, that is, he's had fixed fights before, and it makes me think he said to Kimo before the fight, let's take this easy and go for a draw. Like, I can't lose, I have this title fight coming up, I can't get injured. And Kimo's like, you know what, a draw against Severn doesn't look bad on the record. I can get the bag from Pride and a draw against a known winner in UFC. Not a bad deal. And if we go for real, Severn will probably win. And if he beats Smith next week, I'll probably be able to get a title shot after a draw here. These are just my thoughts. But whilst we're waiting for this fight to be over, I think Kimo's back on steroids. Because when we last seen him at UFC, he was very skinny. Like as though he was cutting weight for something. Like he's bulked back up a bit. Severn shoots in for a takedown towards the end here. Kimo stuffs it. Lets the Severn stand up, readjust, fix his knee pads. And Baz Rutten is freaking out on commentary and just screams, Jesus Christ. And like, will you just hit him already? Like, and Quadros' patience is wearing even more thin if it's not already gone. The fight has been shit. Commentary's let us know that, but commentary's also been the only thing making this fight worth watching. We finally get a takedown with 10 seconds left in the fight, which is hilarious. Commentary says the crowd is relieved that one is over, and the crowd start booing, questioning why we got this fight if all these guys planned to do was just go the distance and survive. But everybody seems in good spirits after the fight. Severn over in Kimo's corner, like, yeah, shakes and hugs. And that's it. That's the end of the fight. I'm hesitant to say score the draw, because again, they don't actually go over the rules at the start of the event here. So, like, you don't know. Like, but score the draw, which again is what they were going for, and is fair, to be honest, over the whole piece. But in our main event, we have Rickson Gracie versus Nobuhiko Takada. See, my pronunciations are actually so good. And we get national anthems before the fight. They play the Brazilian national anthem through the speakers, and then we get a singer for the Japanese national anthem. Quadros compares Takada's popularity to that of Hulk Hogan. Now, I can't really speak to that. I'm a wrestling guy as well, and I don't even know who the fuck Takada is, but he's apparently a wrestler as well. And he's up against Rickson Gracie, the man who, again, commentary say some feel is the greatest fighter on earth. And as soon as I heard Takada was a pro wrestler and he's up against the Gracie, I'm immediately sceptical of the legitimacy of this fight. They say that Rickson didn't want to fight a pro wrestler, but eventually he caved because the offer was good enough for this fight. But I mean, let's just see. Quadros says that Gracie claimed Rickson was 10 times the fighter he was, but we see Rickson here with this just crazy stance, so stiff. He's almost just following him around in a circle without moving anywhere. Like, he stays kind of dead centre, again, just stiff as a board, like around the ring, making no contact. First strike of the fight is a low kick from Takada, checked by Rickson. Some more circling before Rickson then finally clinches against the ropes. Rickson has the single leg in the corner, and the referee just jumps in, stops the fight, breaks them up. And I don't know why. It didn't look like Takada was holding the ropes any more so than Shoji was earlier, you know what I mean? So I don't know why the rules are being applied here but not there. We move them back to the centre, and then Rickson just gets the takedown and the mount. Actually a lot more easy than the struggles that he was having in the corner. But Takada's just holding on for dear life here and manages to last about 1 minute before Rickson then gets the armbar and the win. Commentary says that Rickson is like fucking 400-0, something ridiculous like that. He keeps his undefeated streak alive, and that is it. Rickson gets his trophy and his flowers. That's the end of the show. That brings Pride FC's first event, Pride 1, to a close. Okay, we'll talk about everything on this show like in its own bubble, and then we'll compare it to UFC, right? But I thought, as an event, not horrendous. Okay, we had a fucking real knockout between Goodridge and Taktarov. I don't think we've seen anybody stretchered out like that before when we've been doing these reviews. Like, we've seen people carried out, leave with an oxygen mask, but this was true flatline KO by Gary Goodridge. Just insane. Fight of the night, easy. But first fight of the night, Murakami, fine sub. After that, we had Kitao versus Jones. Less said about that, the better. We had Henzo versus Shoji. Not bad. Not bad. It sort of dragged towards the end, but started off pretty hot. It was a fine fight. One of those ones. Nothing great. Nothing offensively bad, especially when you consider the name Gracie's in it. Not a bad fight. The kickboxing match was horrendous. Just straight up terrible. Brando just completely ignoring the rules, deliberately not ignoring the rules. I don't know what went on backstage, but there must have been beef. But then everything was just cool after the fight was done. I don't understand that at all. We then got to Kimo and Severn. Whilst terrible, what I will say is almost worth going back to watch, because the commentary with Rutten and Stephen Quadros, they were on fine form for this fight, and all night, to be honest, they made this enjoyable. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Listening to these two for half an hour made that fight so not even like beyond bearable. So whilst the fight itself was rotten, the commentary was great. Final match is what it is. Rickson gets the win, and now one fight that wasn't on the show, and I found out about during my research, Igor Mindart versus Hiroki Kurosawa. Hiroki broke his leg in the fight. It was stopped in round 3. It's not on Fight Pass, so I'm not looking it up, but it happened. So there is that. Now, when it comes to actual outside the action, I think when you have 40, in the region of 40,000 people in the building, you should probably show that off, because that is something separating you from every other promotion at the time. Like, the fact you can fill an arena with that many people should be shown off. But that takes me to my next point. We never see Quadros or Rutten. We never see the arena. We never see anything outside the ring. And I've critiqued UFC at recent events for the amount of stalling in between fights, the number of promo packages. Our last event had 45 minutes of action in a 2.5 hour event. And here we had all action. And unless you know who these fighters are before the fight, you have no idea who they are. And like, when they're fighting, they don't break down what their style is, their discipline. You don't know their record. You don't know their demeanour. There's no pre-fight or post-fight interviews. I think commentary from Quadros and Rutten was done in post-production, because again, we never see them. And the audio from the building doesn't feel connected to the commentary. It's weird, but maybe that's why there's no promo packages. Maybe it was all done in Japanese and they don't want to put that on Fight Pass without a translation, which might be the reason that we never actually leave the ring. It's basically just action, and I think that, again, barring the fact that it's not on there because it's all in Japanese and they don't want it on there without a translation, but you can find a happy medium in between, like, all action and just complete stalling. You can fucking tell us who the guys are before the fight, you know what I mean? And even if they did do that in the Japanese version, it wouldn't make any fucking difference to me because I wouldn't be able to understand it. So I'm just going off of what is actually on Fight Pass. But so don't have a go at me, right? But as a first outing for the event as a whole, not terrible, not outstanding. There's some big names on the card. There is star power. I've critiqued UFC for not having that before. Severn, Kimo, Goodridge, Taktarov, a couple of Gracies, and for the Japanese audience, Takada is a big name. So there was star power there. The actual quality of the fights, hit and miss. Commentary was fantastic. I wish we had these two on UFC. And I will be following up on this. I will watch the second Pride event when it comes time. But for Pride 1, that is it. Next review on the channel will be UFC 15, Maurice Smith versus Tank Abbott for the heavyweight title. We have Randy Couture versus Vitor Belfort. The Smashing Machine returns to compete in the second tournament, defending his medal from UFC 14. Can he get it done? Subscribe to find out. Hit the notify bell to keep up with our journey through not only UFC history, but now Pride history as well. Like this video for more Pride content. Leave your comments about Pride below, and I will do my best to respond. And I will see you all next time.